Okay, we are recording again. Next topic is tax management. And actually not the taxes themselves, but the algorithms and the tax methods, tax calculation methods that we're looking at. Come on, there we go. We're going to look at the concept, where to find it, and the configuration process. So where are we in this process? We're back at the billing process, of course, because this is all financial. And I wish they also did the new billing order because it's part of that one too. So we are in that billing process. And previously, in the previous module, we talked about how the billing process touches customers, customer class, etc. We also looked at how that process touches other configurations that are related to customers. Of course, when we looked at taxation, this hits on both sides. Taxation is, of course, bound to where the customer is. Each country, sometimes even region, has its own tax laws. So that's the one side of the story. The other side of the story is, of course, what type of product are you selling and how are these set up in your taxation hierarchy and taxation laws? Example, in the Netherlands, we have two levels of taxes. One is for primary needs, meaning food, basic clothing, and stuff like that. I think it's a 9% tax. And then we have, let's say, the tax for luxury goods, fur coats and stuff like that, which is 21%. So depending on the product you buy and the product you purchase, you have 9 or 21% taxation, right? So, and that is just me, same person living in the same spot, depending on the product that I'm buying, that there is a different taxation. And of course, there's also the possibility that if I sell this across the border, there is another, there might be another tax involved. In our case, in the EU, there are a lot of international tax treaties set up within the EU. So it's a very complex scenario. I will show you that for us, the fact that it is a complex scenario makes it easy for us. I will explain what I mean with that. So taxes in our scenario, there are a couple of objects that come into play here. And we will talk about the configuration process a little bit further down the line. But the first step is the tax itself. So what is the percentage of a certain end product price that you have to charge and pay to the government, right? That is what a tax is. Then we have what we call tax categories. The example that I gave, primary needs, that's a tax category. Everything in that tax category goes under 9% tax. And we've got the luxury goods, which is the other tax category that we have in the Netherlands. 21%. So that is how tax categories are recognized. And the last object here is the tax zone itself. And the tax zone is where you are, right? It's the tax category is bound to the product, and the tax zone is bound to the customer's location. So how do these two bind products to a tax? Well, there is an overlap. For a tax zone, you define which taxes are valid. So in my example, for the Netherlands, the zone, the Netherlands, there are two taxes available. There is a primary needs tax and there is a luxury goods tax. And then if I buy something from an online store or from a store, the system looks, okay, this product, is this grouped in the tax category primary needs, or is this grouped in the category luxury goods in the Netherlands? If I am from Germany, those categories could be, let's say, the same or different depending on what their regulation is. So it's always the overlap from, or the no, let's say the common denominator between the tax category and the tax zone that will tell the system, okay, this is what tax to calculate. The workspace is fairly simple. There is a taxation workspace. It's under finance settings. Here it is. And you see a couple of configurations there. There are tax zones and tax categories top. There is a taxes, and then there are taxation rules that you see. I'm not going to go in there. I'm going to do a demonstration at the end of the module. It's not a big module, this one. We take a short break after that. But what I want to show you is first the process. How do things work? And I think that from a partial perspective within the Netherlands with primary needs and luxury goods, you probably already have a good idea of how it works. But let's do it again with a more abstract example. We've got two countries, one called West and other called East. And in these in our platform, we sell in those two countries. And we grouped our products in two ways. We've got services. Services are taxed in West country with 5% and in East country with 10%. And we've got a group of resources that is taxed in West country with 10 and in East country also with 10%. So what happens if these are the rules? Let's say we buy a product in West country first. So we have the product called shared hosting, which is a service, or let's say is part of the category, tax category services. And additionally, we buy disk space, which is part of the category resources. The price before taxes, you see? So what do we charge? What does the system charge you for the shared hosting? Well, 5% of 100, which is 5, whatever the currency is there. We've got disk space, a resource, 50 before taxes, 10% is 10% taxes over it, means that we have 5 as well, meaning that in total we have a tax of 10, meaning that the customer now needs to pay 160 of the local currency. The East country, we have the same product, although taxation is different. So what do we have? We have the shared hosting, still 100. The fact that it's 10% now means that we have to pay 10, whatever currency it is. Of course, for the resources, because nothing's different there, we pay the same 5. That means that now, if you are in East country, you pay 15 local currencies as taxes, with the result that in West country, you pay 160 for this bundle, and in East country, you pay 165 for this bundle, all because of the fact that the difference lies here in that scenario. So that means that you can set up tax rules, and tax rules consist of multiple components. The first one is, of course, the sales tax. We have to specify which tax to use. And of course, at that point, we need to define for which tax zone, which is the customer's location, this tax is applicable. And of course, for what type of goods. That brings my taxation rule, which means that that is how the taxation process works. And let's quickly do that in an example in a live scenario. Probably I'll have to log in again, so let's make sure that I do that. Otherwise, I do a demo and I have to redo it. Money, so billing. I'm going to settings, and here is my taxation. And what I can do is I can either manually go in these options and create everything manually, individual tax, individual tax zones, individual tax categories, etc., etc. But you can also go through an easy wizard and create the objects along the way. So there are three possible ways to do it if you have installed all plugins, because we do have two, let's say, tax calculation as a service providers that we support, that we have, I wouldn't say have a deal with, because you have to set up the contract with that, but that we have a plugin for. One is EasyTax from BillSoft. We send them the information. This is the customer, he comes from here. This is the type of product. We are in this location. You give us what he needs to pay. And the other thing is Vertex. We will discuss those in 2 slides. But what I'm going to do is the tax calculation from within CloudBlue itself. The first thing to do is define the tax. Let's do our primary needs example in the Netherlands. Primary needs, we had a 9% there. I'm coming to these settings in a second. I'm going back to the taxes in a minute. Then we have to define a tax zone. So in our case, that would be the Netherlands. Let's see if it filters. Let's do an NL. Be aware that this is case sensitive, and for country codes, the system wants lowercase. This one. Next. And then we have a tax category. We can create a new one or use an existing one. I'm going, in this case, to use an existing one and say that all products, for instance, are charged with 9%. I click next, and it gives me an overview that says we have a tax called primary needs, which is 9%. We leverage it for customers from the Netherlands on all products. And if we finish it, we will see that rule appear here. Customers from the Netherlands, for all products, this tax is raised. So let's now go back to that tax, the prim needs, just to show you that you can go back and change it. Let's first add it. So what is level 1 and level 2 tax? Level 1 and level 2 is, and to be honest, I don't really know this from a daily perspective. I know it, for instance, exists in the US, where you have federal taxes and state taxes, and one is leveraged over the amount, including the second one. And the difference is the level 1 tax is we have an amount of tax without any other thing. So that's the net price. Level 1 tax is we take a percentage of that net amount and add it to it. So let's use as an example that there's something of $10 and the tax is 10%, meaning that the level 1 tax means it's $1 and we add it to the amount. If we have a tax level 2, let's say federal tax, that is 10% as well. The 10% in this case is not leveraged based on the $10 original price, but on the $11 gross price. That is the result of the $10 net price plus the level 1 tax of 1%. So in this case, the level 2 tax to be paid, if it's 10%, is $1.10. So the total price the customer would pay in this specific example would be $12.10, where the net amount was $10, the level 1 tax was 10%, which is $1, and the level 2 tax was $1.10, and all that was calculated. That is what level 1 and level 2 taxes are. Of course, that means that the level 1 taxes will be calculated first, and then we do all level 2 taxes. Then we have a calculation type. I don't know if this is a regulatory thing or a legislative thing or whatever, but we can calculate it per item and we can calculate it per document. And if you choose your amounts right, you can have a difference between those two if you look at the total amount. I'm not sure what the difference is, whether that is I'm not a financial person, and nobody was able to explain to me when we would choose one and when we would choose the other. I think it's more of a financial legislation thing than a free choice. And then that tax can be applied on document date or can be applied at the end date. And the difference could be that in the meantime of that scenario, you have already prepared a price change. So now at the beginning, the price of the product, because of exchange rates, et cetera, or because you know that Microsoft is going to do this, now the price is $10. And at the end of the month, end of the billing period, the price is $12. So there is a difference. Do we use the $10, the document date, or do we already have to use, this is a legislation thing, the $12 that we know at the end of the period the price will be? And then we've got the extract amount from item amount, or is it included? In the Netherlands, I'm using the Netherlands because that's the best reference that I have because I live there. If I go to a store, on average, the prices that I see are the prices that I need to pay, meaning all prices are including taxes, et cetera, et cetera. However, if I am a business, there are stores where I can decide to not pay taxes. In that case, the till will extract the tax amount from the item amount that I see, and I have to pay the lesser amount because I'm a business to business. I can get return of my taxation amount. So if you work like that, check this box. There is a big difference between the two. So those are the configurations of the tax. Let's go back to my slide deck and go through the process once more on a slide. So the first thing you do is you register the tax rates, which is the tax itself plus the percentage. Then we have a tax category. Create a tax category or assign a tax category, an existing one or create a new one. Create the zone. Hey, you're a customer from the Netherlands. You are a customer from Germany, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have to either create a taxation algorithm or we create the rules. And for me, these are not two steps that are coming after each other. I would actually say that 4 goes here and 5 goes there. I will show you that algorithm thing as well. Let's do that. Let me go back to taxation. And under tax zones and categories, there is a tax zone assignment rules, and there is an algorithm setting. So this is quite, I wouldn't say a hidden spot, but at least it's not obvious that you can change this algorithm. But we have 3 algorithms. Same country and state algorithm for the US. And as I understood, this would work in Mexico as well, because also Mexico is a federation. So you have the country Mexico, but you have the the independent states there as well, and those states have their taxes, and the country itself has taxes. So there are basically three basic rules in this algorithm. The first one says you are in the same state and country as the seller. In that case, this goes, you are in the same country but not in the same state. And the third one is you're not in the same country. And then you can set your taxes accordingly. If you go for default, it simply means that you have to build everything manually. Every relationship has to be set manually, etc., etc. If you only are selling within your country, it's not that hard to do. But if you sell across the border, and I'm not talking about internally within AMX or within América Móvil, Claro, etc., but I'm talking about you from Brazil sell to a customer in Argentina. That's what we're talking about, selling across the border. But I think that in your case, that doesn't go. Argentina sells in Argentina, Brazil sells in Brazil, as far as I know. And then we have, and like I said, the fact that it is so complex makes it easy for us because there are so many little rules and they change every once in a while. And they're so very subtle that we had to decide to build this whole tax mechanism within the EU into a EU VAT algorithm. And if I click that, all the objects will be created, all the rules will be created, all the taxes will be created, etc., etc. So all of a sudden, instead of it being very complex, it becomes very easy because I only select EU VAT algorithm and I can sit back and relax. I'm not going to do it because I might break the demo system. Here's my tax categories. I can add new tax categories if I want to, or I can go in and see which plan categories are there and which resource categories are there. I can remove things. I can add new plan categories. And you see that in this case, and this is a risk. This is really a risk. If you create a new plan category for whatever reason, the reason could be I'm importing a new product. And that means that in that PPR file, we discussed that. In that PPR file, we create a new plan category. It's not automatically added to the tax calculation. So if we want to, or if we want to be fully compliant, we need to add all plan categories to at least one tax category. In this case, I only have one that's called all products, but I could say I've got a primary needs and I've got a luxury goods tax category. And some go left and others go right, but it's never, oh, and let's leave out three, right? You are either a primary need, and if you're not a primary need, like clothing and food, you're automatically a luxury good. So make sure that your plan categories are part of your tax categories. The same thing for resource categories. Here also we miss something. Now we're up to date. Now we are up to date. It's a key thing to remember that. The tax zones, here we have the tax zones, customers from the Netherlands. This is what it does. And one of the fun things that I can do, if I created those rules, I can test. I can test my rules. I can say, hey, let's do a new customer, and that new customer is in the Netherlands, blah, blah, blah. Or we use an existing one to just do a test. And let me create another rule here. In this case, we have our primary needs tax. And that primary needs tax, I said extract tax amount from the item amount no. Let's now create another use case. And let's say we create a new tax that is German tax, something like that, Control AC. Let's make it also 9%. Let's also make it a level 1 tax. But in this case, I check the box. The rest I leave the same. Otherwise, we don't have a good comparison. I'm going to create a new tax zone. I don't know where Germany is. DA, I think, but I'm not sure. Search. Yeah, DE. Deutschland. Next. And we also use the existing all products category. Finish. And what I can now do is I can test my product. And I'm going to use a new customer that is from Germany. I can remove that one. Berlin. I'm not sure what the Berlin thing is. And I want to buy my VPS services for a year with at least that resource in it, and I click test. I see that the extended price is $12, that the tax total is 99 cents, and that the taxable amount, the original price, is $11.01. If I would do the same thing for a customer from the Netherlands, let's get this one out. And I'm going to buy exactly the same set, this one, for a year with that specific resource in it. I click next. You see that the extended price is $12 still, but that the end customer now pays $13.08, where the tax total is $1.08, and the taxable amount is now the $12. So that is the difference between that little checkbox, extract tax from account, from amount. A very important thing. Basically, it defines where this number goes. Does this number go as the taxable amount, or is this number the total, and then we work our way back? Key thing for that. And then we have those external tax engines, right? Tax calculate. I always call it tax calculation as a service. There are, like I said, two. The advantage of those are if there are very complex scenarios, and I see that happening more and more, where there is not only a federal tax or a state tax, but also city taxes, et cetera, making the whole calculation a disaster for us to handle it, because our platform takes care of country, takes care of state taxes, but we do not understand city taxes in this case. So we have one called EasyTax. EasyTax might not be relevant for you because EasyTax support tax calculation for a number of countries. However, the plugin that we built is for USA and Canada only. So I think that for you, EasyTax is not that interesting to know about further. But what it does is actually the same thing as the other plugin. We send document details, customer details to the EasyTax system. EasyTax system does the calculation and sends the results back. For each tax level, we get the tax in that case. Is it federal? Is it state? Is it local, etc.? And that detailed information we can now add to the invoice. Besides that, we have Vertex. And the Vertex module is, I would almost say, available for all regions supported by Vertex. So here, we are not the limiting thing, but Vertex, I would not say is limiting, but if Vertex supports it, we support it, as opposed to for EasyTax. EasyTax, we only support USA and Canada, although EasyTax supports more. What we send, location of the buyer, location of the seller, the product or service type, and the purchase amount. And the system generates one request per document. That means that we have separate lines that we're passing, but it is one request. And then Vertex performs tax calculation and returns the tax amounts per line to billing so we can add it to the invoice. So the more complex your situation is, I think the more worth it will become to start using Vertex as your tax calculation provider. Having said that, what questions do you have so far? Can I get a thumbs up if you don't have questions? All right. Super. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't use taxation, so
I know,
yeah.
I know. But
That's
still,
why I'm so quiet on this module, you know.
always good.
Yeah, okay. I done my questions in the end user payment.
Also good. For the rest, let's stop the recording here because I don't think indeed that there are any questions, not just from you, but not from anybody. So let's take a break until I've got it 08. 10. Let's be back at 25 minutes past.